Today, we're going to discuss sidechaining in FL Studio. I'm going to explain what sidechaining is, how you can set it up in the mixer, and also demonstrate some different ways that you can utilize sidechaining to achieve a better mix. So let's hop right in and get to it. Okay, so first off, what is sidechaining? So sidechaining is essentially using the audio signal from one mixer track to trigger an effect on another mixer track. So a very popular application of sidechaining in hip hop or electronic music is ducking the initial transient of the 808 or the bass anytime that the kick drum hits. So you can see here that I have two audio files shown. The top one is a basic kick drum pattern, and the bottom one is the 808 that has been sidechained to duck down when the kick hits. Now zooming in on the waveforms, we can see that anytime the kick drum hits, the beginning of the 808 is quickly ducked down, and this will ensure that your kick drum can cut through the mix and is not competing with the bass for that low end frequency space whenever they're both hitting at the same time. But notice that there are times when the 808 is hitting by itself and it isn't hitting at the same time as when the kick hits. Well, when that happens, there would be no need to duck the 808. And that's why sidechaining is so efficient. If set up correctly, it's only going to engage an effect whenever it sees signal from another audio track. So hopefully this example can give you some basic understanding of what sidechaining is and what it's essentially going to do for you in your mix. It's basically a way to trigger a certain effect to happen. So how do we set up the sidechain process within FL Studio? So here in the mixer, you can see that we have our kick track routed to mixer track number 1, and then we have the 808 that's routed to mixer track number 2. Now, if we come over here to the kick drums mixer track, you can see down here at the bottom that the output of the kick mixer track is routed to the master channel. So in order to get this kick drum sidechained to the 808, all we have to do is come over here to the arrow that's at the bottom of the 808's mixer track on mixer track number 2, and we can right click this arrow and select sidechain to this track. So we can now see that the kick's output is routed out to the master channel, and then we also have a new wire here that's routed out to the 808's mixer channel. But the difference is this little knob right here going to the 808's mixer channel is set at 0, and then the knob over here for the kick going to the master channel is set at 100% or the default setting. So this is very important. What this is telling us is that we should hear the audio signal from the kick coming from the master channel, but we shouldn't hear any of the kick signal coming from the 808 channel because this knob right here is turned all the way down. You don't want this knob turned up at all because then you would start hearing the kick get louder and louder as you turn it up because you're already sending it to the master channel. So you'd essentially be doubling up the audio coming from the kick channel by routing it to two different places, and that's not what we want. We want to leave this knob at 0, and what this does is it allows the 808 mixer channel to see what's going on over here on the kick drums channel without actually allowing the audio signal from the kick to be played through the 808's channel. So now what we can do is, let's say that we wanted to apply some sidechain compression to duck this 808 whenever the kick drum is hitting. So what we can do is come over here to the 808's mixer channel and we can load a compressor like the Fruity Limiter. And then down here on the bottom of the Fruity Limiter, you can see that it has a compressor section. So we're gonna go ahead and open that up. Now, if we just leave this compressor as is, then it's going to compress the 808 at all times, but that's not what we want. We only want the compressor to engage on the 808 whenever the kick drum is hitting at the exact same time as the 808. So what we need to do is activate the sidechain input to this compressor to let it know that we only want to duck the 808 whenever it sees that the kick drum is hitting. Now, in order to do this, all we need to do is come down here to the sidechain section and right click and select the kick drum as the sidechain input to this plugin. Now, if you didn't take the time to name your mixer tracks, then when you right clicked right here, what it's going to show you is all the mixer tracks that you have sidechained to this plugin. So I actually named the kick drums mixer track kick, so that's what it shows right here. But if you didn't do that, then you would just select the mixer track that you want. And if you aren't seeing the kick here in this menu, then it means that you didn't sidechain the kick to the 808 properly, like we just went over. So go back to that part where we did the routing in the mixer. So now that the kick is selected, we have our sidechain set up correctly. Now, Fruity Limiter does make it easy for us by having this sidechain selector box right here on the plugin. But if you're sidechaining with a plugin that doesn't have that selector box displayed on the plugin, like for instance, a third-party plugin, then what you would need to do, let's go ahead and just open up a third-party plugin like the R Compressor by Waves Audio. So let me pull it right here to the middle of the screen. So what you want to do with third-party plugins is you can come up here to the Settings tab, and then come over here to the VST wrapper settings and select processing. Now, once you're here in the processing tab, down here under connections is where you're gonna wanna make the selection for your sidechain input. So right here, you're gonna see mono aux in. That's what I'm gonna choose as my kick drum, and then I'm just gonna make sure to activate that input. So you might see other words right here. Since this is a mono plugin, it says mono aux in. But if you were using a stereo plugin, it would probably say stereo aux in. Or if the plugin is designed for sidechaining, like specifically, it might say sidechain input. You might have a couple of different variations right here, but you just want to make sure that you're selecting your sidechain input right here under the connections tab. And now you're pretty much all good to go. The plugin is set up to only activate whenever it's going to see that signal from the kick drums mixer track. And do keep in mind that we're just using the kick here as an example. There are other things that you could sidechain that I will show you later on in the video, but the kick in the 808 is just one of the most common uses for sidechaining. So now that you properly know how to activate the sidechain input for both stock and third-party plugins, let's go ahead and just show you the best settings to use on the compressor so that way the sidechain actually sounds good. So I'm going to delete this third-party plugin, and we're just going to use the Fruity limiter because that's what everyone will have if they're using FL Studio. So we've already got that kick input sidechain set up correctly. And keep in mind that this compressor is loaded on the 808's mixer channel. So the compression and the ducking is going to be applied to the 808 and not the kick. The kick drum is just used to activate this effect on the 808. So first off, you're gonna wanna come over here to the ratio setting, and you're gonna want a fairly high ratio. So I like to go for anything like 6:1 or 8:1. So let's go ahead and just set it at 8:1. And this just ensures that you're gonna get a lot of compression, which we want, right? We want to compress this 808 heavily and get it out of the way of the kick drum. Next up, we're gonna want a super fast attack time. So right here on the attack knob, you want this set at the fastest setting possible. And the reason that you want this fast is because whenever this plugin sees that the kick is hitting, we want it to turn down the 808 as fast as it possibly can. You don't want this compressor just waiting around and doing things slow. You want fast compression. Now, next up, we just want to set the release time. And the release time is actually going to control how long we are ducking the 808. So in theory, you only want this compressor to turn down the 808 whenever the kick drum hits. Whenever that kick hit is over, you want this compressor to let go and return the 808 to its normal level. So a kick is typically very short. It's just a really quick hit. So we're talking milliseconds here. So for me, I usually start with the release time around 40 milliseconds, and then I'll adjust it later on. But this is usually just enough time to let the kick play out and then allow that 808 to come back in and return to its original volume level. Now, I will say that if you set the release time too slow, like 100 milliseconds or higher, you're really gonna hear how bad and drastic this effect can sound, because it's gonna sound like the 808 is pumping because the compressor is clamping down and then it's holding it for way too long, and that's not what we want. We only need it to quickly duck down and let that kick drum hit and then go back to its normal level. So let's leave the release time at 40 milliseconds, and then we can take a listen and really fine tune the release based on the kick drum. It really depends on the kick drum that you're using. Some kick drums hit, for a longer time, and some are shorter. So the release time is going to be different for each song and each kick drum sample that's used. Now, also on the Fruity limiter in specific, I like to turn down this sustain knob. I don't want that effect engaged at all. So really all that's left is the threshold setting right here. And as you lower this, you're going to start to get more and more compression on the audio signal. Now, how much compression or ducking that you want depends on what you're going for. Some people completely duck the 808 and some people only duck it by like 5 decibels. So what we can do is we can go ahead and just press play and kind of mess around with it, and also adjust the release time so that way we can hear how this effect sounds. Okay, so that's sounding pretty good right there. Let's go ahead and just press play again. And what I'm gonna do is drag this release time all the way up, so that way you can really hear what it's gonna sound like if you have too slow of a release time, and you're gonna really hear that pumping effect. Okay, so as you heard, when I drug that release time up, you started to hear that pumping effect that you sometimes hear in genres like EDM or dance music. And that can be cool if that's what you're going for. But for me, I try to not make this effect very noticeable, if at all. So a somewhat fast release time, just enough to let that kick cut through, is what I tend to go for. And again, you can lower the threshold as much as you prefer. It just depends on how much ducking you want to get and where you have the ratio set. But you just got to experiment and kind of go with what sounds best to your ears. So let's go ahead and just press play one more time and kind of dial these settings back to where they sounded good. Okay, so that sounds pretty good right there. And really the main reason why I sidechain in my mixes with the kick and the 808 specifically is because when those two elements are hitting at the same time, they're really going to clash because they're both trying to dominate the low end frequency spectrum. So if you can kind of get the 808 out of the way and let the kick drum, punch through the mix, and then allow the melodic sustain of the 808 to come back up and kind of, ring out, then you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. You have the kick drum hit, and then you have the melodic, element of the 808 playing after the kick drum. So this is going to help you achieve a little bit more clarity in the low end. Now, another benefit to sidechaining your kick and 808 is the amount of headroom that you can create. So what I've done is I've soloed out the kick and the 808. What I'm going to do is press play, and we're going to listen to the loop, and I'm going to turn the sidechain compression on and off. And I want y'all to pay attention to where we're peaking at when I do that. Okay, so as you could see, with the sidechain compression turned on, we were peaking at -6 decibels. And then when I turned the sidechain compression off, we went all the way up to -3 decibels. So we saved ourselves 3 decibels when the sidechain compression is turned on. So we achieved 3 more decibels of headroom without actually losing any perceived loudness, right? So this is a huge step into getting your mix loud. You're creating more headroom while maintaining the perceived loudness. So that's essentially how you would set up and use sidechaining for kick and bass. Now, another use for sidechaining is ducking the melodic instruments in your song to make room for the vocal. So you can see here in this example that I have all of my guitars right here in red, and they're all routed over here to the guitar bus on mixer track number 14. And if I click on the lead vocal right here on mixer track number 21, you can see that I have the lead vocal sidechained over here to mixer track number 14 to the guitar bus. Now here on this guitar bus, I have this plugin right here called Track Spacer by Waves Factory. Now what this is going to do is it's going to duck the frequencies of the vocal here on the guitar bus whenever the vocal plays. So it's essentially going to help the vocal to cut through a very dense mix where it's kind of competing with the guitars for that same frequency space here in the mid-range. And as you can see here on the processing tab of the plugin settings, I have the vocal right here, the main vocal, selected as the sidechain input, and it's activated to this third-party plugin. So again, we have the sidechain set up correctly. So let's go ahead and just take a listen.
Falling, but you were right there to stop me from becoming unaware. I need your love and offer help, you were my saving grace. Never knew this pain could ever be erased. The fear of loneliness would get the best of me, but now when I'm in need, I look to you, you're my necessity, especially cause you invest in me, you're telling me.
Okay, so the lead vocals frequencies were in blue, and they were up here up top. And then the guitar frequencies were in white, and those were the frequencies that were being ducked. And you could notice that whenever the vocals stopped playing and it was just an empty spot in the song, the instruments weren't being ducked at all. The guitars were allowed to just be played at their normal level. But whenever the vocal signal sent its sidechain signal over here to this plugin, that's when the ducking started occurring on the guitars. So that's another popular mixing technique that Sidechain can help you achieve. All right, so that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the content. Please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.